He watched from behind thermal glass, laughing as the human walked into the minus 120 degrees Celsius blizzard, without gear, without fear. The alien scholar had studied 100 species, but none like this. 30 minutes later, the laughter stopped. And what he saw next changed everything. Before we dive deep into the story, subscribe to the channel so you never miss powerful and thought-provoking stories. Let's go in deep. The mission was supposed to be routine. The Dominion Science Corps had assigned Scholar Vellner to observe human behavior under stress, part of an interspecies endurance project that compared how different life forms adapted to hostile environments. Vellner had no interest in war or politics. He studied biology, evolution, and weakness. He believed every species had a limit, and he loved watching them reach it. When Earth agreed to send a volunteer, Vellner smiled. He had seen humans in labs, fragile bones, soft skin, emotional responses to almost everything. Their survival on Earth was impressive, but beyond that atmosphere, he believed, they were nothing special. The test site was set on Varela 9, a frozen moon where surface temperatures dropped to minus 120 degrees Celsius during peak blizzard cycles. Wind there did not howl, it screamed. The cold cracked metal. The storm swallowed sound. Vellner had previously lost 2 drones and 1 assistant just trying to collect samples. Perfect conditions, he thought, to break a human. He constructed a thermal viewing dome on a nearby ridge, fully insulated and supported by Dominion tech. From there, he would monitor vitals, behavioral reactions, and cognitive decline in real time. The trial would last 30 minutes. If the subject survived that long, Vellner would consider it a success, or a statistical anomaly. Before the test began, he recorded a short message for his academic board. I predict collapse within 10 minutes. The human body cannot adapt to Varela's environment without augmentation. Let this prove, once and for all, that Earth's evolutionary pride is misplaced. Then, he activated the cameras, sat back, and waited. The human was already walking into the storm. Varela 9 was not just cold, it was cool. Orbiting a dead gas giant in an uninhabited sector, the moon's surface remained frozen, under black clouds and storms that never stopped. The air was poisonous to most species. The ground, made of fractured crystal and metallic frost, could slice through exoboots within hours. Even machines struggled here, most short-circuited. Others simply froze in place and never moved again. The Dominion had chosen Varela as an environmental test site decades ago. It was perfect for one reason. It did not care who lived or died. There were no trees, no shelter, no sounds except the wind. Wind so sharp it could strip skin from bone if one stood against it too long. The temperature dropped beyond what most species could comprehend. At minus 120 degrees Celsius, even reinforced Dominion armor cracked under pressure. They had tested dozens of species on this moon. Cold-blooded crawlers from Tharnak, heat-adapted warriors from Solarian, even cybernetic hybrids built to last in extreme climates. All failed, some froze in place, standing like statues until their cores gave out. Others clawed at their own limbs, trying to create warmth that never came. Not one lasted more than 20 minutes without collapse. And yet today, one human stood on its surface. No armor, no thermal suit, no oxygen tank, just a visor, a light pressure layer over his face, and a black earth-made suit. Thin, flexible, basic. From the viewing dome, Scholar Vellner zoomed in. The human had reached the first ridge, where the wind was strongest. Ice was building on his shoulders. Frost was creeping into the seams of his gloves. Vellner smiled to himself. This is where he breaks, he whispered. But the human did not stop. He kept walking into the heart of the storm. They had offered Earth the option to send equipment. Earth refused. They had offered to send multiple test Subjects. Earth declined. They sent only one. No name was submitted through the Dominion channels. No rank, no military designation. The data field simply read, human volunteer cleared. He arrived without ceremony. No escort, no translators. Just a small landing craft that touched down on Varela's frozen surface for exactly 32 seconds before lifting off again, leaving behind a man wrapped in a dark suit with no markings. The Dominion teams laughed at first. He does not even have thermal shielding. One technician joked. Scholar Vellner was less amused. He watched from his dome, narrowing his eyes at the human's posture. There was no hesitation in the man's movement. No sign of resistance. He stood still for a moment, facing the wind, then stepped forward as if this was just another walk. Vellner reviewed the biometric feed. Heart rate, steady. Oxygen, stable. Core temp, lowering but slowly. Nothing remarkable. Yet something about the man disturbed him. He was too calm. Vellner had studied other humans before. They always asked questions. They always showed nervous signs, tapping fingers, darting eyes, tightened jaws. This one asked nothing. He had not spoken a single word since arriving, even as the wind screamed and the frost began forming on the outer layer of his visor. He kept moving, straight, focused, as if the storm was background noise. Some of the younger scholars speculated maybe he was enhanced. VELNA. R checked the scans. Nothing. No cybernetics. No injections. No special genes. Just a human. One who chose to walk willingly into the coldest storm in the galaxy. Alone, and never looked back. Scholar Vellner had studied over 47 species in his lifetime. He had seen creatures that could survive the pressure of black holes. He had watched gas-based life forms adapt to vacuum. He had even interviewed war-born giants from shattered planets. But none of them fascinated him like humans, not because they were strong, but because they were inconsistent. They failed where others succeeded. And sometimes they succeeded where logic said they should have failed. Vellner hated that. He believed in data, in predictions, in control. And every time humans slipped through those models, it irritated him. So when Earth submitted a volunteer for the Varela experiment, he saw an opportunity, not to learn, but to prove a point. His hypothesis was clear. Humans have limits. Their survival record is based on luck and desperation. In the absence of tools or shelter, they will fail. Just like everything else, he documented it thoroughly, backed it with numbers, plotted the expected decline in core temperature, calculated the point of collapse by minute 20. He sent his prediction to the Dominion Research Council with a confident note. This test will end in physical failure, followed by neural shutdown. Estimated survival time, 18 minutes. He prepared a presentation, outlined talking points. Imagined the way his colleagues would applaud his findings. The human had no training in extreme cold survival, no equipment advantage, no genetic advantage. Just a heartbeat. That was all. And Vellner was sure, absolutely sure, it would be the last thing to fade before everything else gave out. So he watched and waited. And smiled. Because science was always right until it was not. The timer passed 20 minutes. Then 30. Then 60. Scholar Vellner stared at the screen, his fingers twitching over the control panel. He had already recalibrated the biometric feed twice, certain something was broken. But each reading came back clean. The human was still alive. More than that, he was still moving. The storm had intensified. Wind speeds crossed deadly levels. Visibility dropped to 0. Even the thermal drones Vellner launched to track the man froze mid-air and dropped from the sky. One shattered, another vanished completely, and yet the human kept walking. No shelter, no pause, no heat source. Just forward movement. At 1 hour and 17 minutes, Vellner received a ping from his assistant stationed on a nearby monitoring outpost. "Scholar, the human has reached the inner ice fields." That was not possible. The inner fields were where even automated machines shut down. Cold thickened into sheets that cracked metal and buried movement under silence. No living being had crossed that zone. Vellner triple-checked the visuals, and there he was, the man coated in frost, slowed but still upright, stepping across terrain that had never seen a footprint. By hour 2, Vellner's confidence began to fracture. His breathing grew shallow. He no longer spoke to the recorder. His predictions, his charts, all wrong. Nothing was going as expected. The human's core temperature had dropped below survivable limits. But his vitals still held. Muscle strain, high. Blood oxygen, steady. Nerve response, sharp. He should not be alive, Vellner whispered. By the end of the 3rd hour, the human had not collapsed. He had not stopped. And Vellner, for the first time in his life, was no longer curious. He was afraid. The numbers no longer made sense. Scholar Vellner sat stiffly in his insulated dome, eyes locked on the data screen, reading the same impossible statistics over and over. According to Dominion biology standards, a human body exposed to Varela's climate for more than 30 minutes without thermal augmentation should begin to shut down. At 45 minutes, nerve pain. At 60, motor control loss. At 90, organ damage. At 120, death. The human had passed all those points, and he was still going. The body should have failed, but it had not. His joints should have frozen. His blood should have thickened. The oxygen in his cells should have dropped to fatal levels, but the man kept walking, slow, staggered, covered in ice. But never down. Even his eyes, visible behind the frost-covered visor, stayed open, unblinking. Focused on the storm ahead like it was something to be conquered, not feared. Vellner tapped into the neurometric log. Neural signals showed pain spikes, yes, but not retreat. Not even hesitation. The human brain was registering the cold. But instead of shutting down, it was adapting. And that was impossible. "I do not understand," Vellner muttered. He searched again for an implant. A drug signature. A system override. Nothing. It was not tech. It was something else. Somewhere deep inside that body, past logic and muscle and bone, there was something alien. And it was not the storm. It was the will to continue. The kind of force that did not ask permission from biology. It just moved forward. And as Vellner stared at the frozen silhouette climbing the final ridge, he whispered to himself, "This is not survival. This is domination." The blizzard thickened. Wind screamed louder now, pulling snow in violent swirls across the ice fields. The sky above Varela darkened to near black. Sensors lost track of the human completely. Scholar Vellner's screen went static, then flatlined. Visual feed gone. Thermal feed unreadable. Biosignals silent. He froze. Had the storm finally won? He leaned forward, eyes locked on the scanner, fingers trembling. Then, a pulse, a flicker in the corner of the display, faint, like a breath too soft to hear. Vellner enhanced the signal, rerouted power, and forced a visual filter through the frozen haze. And there it was. Movement. Not from a machine. Not from falling ice. But from a figure. The human. He was dragging something. A large object. Smooth. Metallic. Unfamiliar. It looked like debris at first. But as he came closer, Vellner's blood chilled. It was one of the monitoring drones. One that had vanished earlier, now deactivated. Half covered in frost, and hanging from the man's shoulder like a trophy. The man dropped it at the edge of the test boundary. Then he looked up. Right at the dome, right at Vellner. There were no cameras on the dome's surface. No lights, no visible beacon, but the human had found it, through the storm. Through the whiteout, he had sensed it. Vellner stepped back instinctively. His breath caught. The human stood still, ice clinging to every inch of him, steam rising faintly from his skin, not from heat, but from something burning underneath. And then, in the middle of the deadliest storm known to the Dominion, the man raised one hand, not in surrender, in greeting, as if to say, "I knew you were watching." Vellner's laughter from earlier was now a memory, a cold, hollow echo buried in the ice. Scholar Vellner had always believed in observation without emotion. He was trained to remain neutral, a mirror reflecting data, untouched by feeling. But now, as the human stood motionless in the blizzard, staring directly through the storm toward him, Vellner felt something he had never felt in all his studies. Panic. He stumbled back from the console, knocking over a data pad. Cold sweat formed on his skin despite the dome's heating. His breath came faster. He tried to convince himself this was still science, still controlled. But the shaking in his hands betrayed him. He replayed the footage. Again and again. 3 hours. In the open. No gear. No tech. No survival suit. The man had not only endured the storm, he had used it. He had walked through it like it was nothing. And now, he stood at the edge of the testing zone, not collapsed, not broken, but watching. Waiting. Vellner looked again at the human's face. There was no anger there. Just calm. Like the man had known from the very beginning how this would end. "This is not right," Vellner whispered. He opened a channel to the Dominion control office, requesting extraction. "Immediate. I believe the test has been compromised." The response was delayed. Then came the message. "The human is outside the boundary. He is not threatening you. Observation must continue." Vellner stared at the words, hands trembling. "Not threatening?" "Not yet." He turned back to the viewport. The human was gone. No footsteps. No trail. Nothing. Only storm. Only ice. And the terrifying knowledge that he was no longer studying a subject. He was being studied in return. Scholar Vellner stayed frozen in place. Eyes wide, chest tight, mind racing. The human had vanished into the storm. No tracking signal. No bioscan. Nothing. The snow outside blew undisturbed. The man had come, endured, delivered something the Dominion could not explain, and disappeared like smoke. The screen flashed again, not from the human suit, but from the Dominion uplink. A file had been received. There was no header. No sender, just a single video clip, transmitted in perfect silence. Vellner opened it. It showed the same human, standing on Varela before the storm had fully risen. The camera panned across his face. There was no defiance, no fear. Just focus. Then he spoke. Only once. "We never needed to prove anything." The feed cut. No threat. No insult. Just truth. Earth had never issued a formal protest about the experiment. They had not asked for terms, conditions, or safety protocols. They had not even demanded results. They had simply accepted the terms and sent someone who made the test irrelevant. Because this was not about survival. This was about sending a message, not to the scholar. To the Dominion. Earth had nothing to prove, because Earth already knew what it was, and now, so did everyone watching. No war. No weapons. Just a man, a storm, and silence stronger than fear. A message Earth never said aloud, because they let the blizzard speak for them. Long after the storm passed, long after the broadcast was cut and the data files were locked away, Scholar Vellner sat alone in the observation dome, not writing, not analyzing, just staring into the ice. He had come to this moon to confirm a theory. Instead, he had witnessed something that shattered every assumption he held about humanity. The Dominion had always seen humans as unpredictable, emotional, illogical. But what they missed was that humans were never designed for comfort. They were made in hardship. Their history was not written in moments of peace. It was carved from struggle, war, starvation, and cold. On Earth, storms were not enemies. They were teachers. Fire was not a destroyer. It was survival. And pain? Pain was not the end. It was where they started. While other species evolved to avoid suffering, humans evolved to endure it, to walk into the dark without a guarantee they would come back and do it anyway. Because for them, survival was never about strength, it was about refusing to stop. That was what Vellner had seen in the storm. Not resistance, not rebellion, but something deeper. Conviction. A quiet force that did not scream or demand attention. It simply moved forward, even when the body wanted to fall, even when the air itself said no. That is why humans survive what others fear, because where others see the edge of life, humans see a challenge and step into it. And just like that, a man walked through the deadliest storm in the galaxy and left without saying a word. No armor, no threat, just proof. If this story left you thinking, like the video, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who respects quiet strength. The next story will go even deeper.